Late at night in 1907, a private library in New York was still lit. The heads of several trust companies were summoned here. The door was quietly locked, and the key was in the hands of Morgan, 70. He sat by the fireplace, waiting for everyone to come up with a plan. Before dawn, you must raise funds to save the city. No one can leave without a commitment. At that time, the United States did not have a central bank and relied on private coordination. Why should this old man carry the whole of Wall Street? The answer starts with his family and training. He was born into a wealthy and prominent family in Hartford. His father, Junius, was an international financier who ran a bank in London. From an early age, his father strictly trained him to deal with numbers in credit. Even day-to-day expenses are required to be documented on a case-by-case basis. He studied in Switzerland and Germany and attended the University of Göttingen. This kind of training made him particularly disgusted with disorder. The rosacea accompanied him for many years and also shaped his tough appearance. In 1861, he married his beloved Mimi. 4 months later, Mimi died of tuberculosis. In 1865, he remarried and later had 4 children. Grief did not end life, but it made him more restrained. He put his emotions away and turned his attention to the numbers. In the second half of the 19th century, American railroads expanded at high speed. Repeated construction and price wars have left many companies on the brink of bankruptcy. J.P. Morgan began restructuring deadlines and management. The most famous story takes place on his yacht, the Pirate. Central New York competed fiercely with the Pennsylvania Railroad. In 1885, representatives of both parties boarded Morgan's yacht. He tried to stop the two companies from trespassing on each other's territory. It was later recorded that the yacht would not land until it was negotiated. In the end, both sides compromised, and the expansion of the 2 duplicate lines was stopped. This mediation established Morgan's image as an arbiter. Similar restructuring came to be known as organization. The first step is to take over the financially troubled railway company. He also introduced European capital to American railways and industry. The second step is to reorganize the management and take a seat on the board. The third step is to adjust the debt and promote the reconciliation of lines and freight rates. He did not own all the industries, but he influenced many giants. Cross-directorate positions, giving J.P. Morgan Group power throughout the industry. In 1901, Carnegie was ready to sell the steel business. He wrote the asking price on a piece of paper, $480 million. That was close to the size of the federal government's annual spending at the time. Morgan merged it with other steel companies to form U.S. Steel. According to the Carnegie Institution, Morgan was quick to accept the offer. The deal made Carnegie one of the richest people in the world. U.S. Steel became the first billion-dollar company. At its inception, it controlled about 60% of U.S. steel production. Previously, Morgan helped drive the formation of General Electric. His core competencies are financing, restructuring, and coordinated control. But the next challenge comes from the country's monetary system. In 1895, the Treasury's gold reserves fell to about $45 million. The previous panic of 1893 continued to hit U.S. finance. Paper money was exchanged for gold, and Treasury reserves were constantly being siphoned off. The Cleveland government turned to the Morgan-Belmont Consortium. Both parties exchanged Treasury bonds for gold in accordance with existing laws. Morgan played the role of interim financing coordinator during the crisis. The consortium pledged about $65 million in gold to the Treasury. Gold reserves rebounded and the pressure on the gold standard temporarily eased. Morgan was 57 at the time. 12 years later, the crisis returned. In 1907, the trust company ran a systemic panic of detonation. Morgan, 70, summons bankers and trust company executives. The J.P. Morgan library records confirm that the gate is locked. He asked for a joint rescue plan that night. Negotiations lasted several hours and the atmosphere was highly tense. the bailout was driven by J.P. Morgan, banks, and government money. In the early hours of the morning, the parties finally committed to contribute. The market is stabilizing, but the economy is still being hit hard. The crisis exposed the absence of a lender of last resort system in the United States. As a result, Morgan was both praised and raised concerns about the concentration of power. The question is no longer just about saving the city, but who has the right to decide who to save? The public relied on him and feared him. In fact, as early as 1902, the Roosevelt government had sued Northern Securities. In 1904, the Supreme Court upheld the split order. The state began to refuse to settle monopoly issues solely through private negotiations. Titanic belongs to the White Star Line, which is controlled by a group formed by Morgan. At the same time, the money trust controversy swept the country. The Congressional Commission on PACT investigates excessive concentration of financial power. One of the focuses of the survey was the network of bank cross-directors. Morgan, 75, was summoned to testify before Congress. This is a public hearing, not a criminal trial. In December 1912, the lawyer Untermeyer began questioning. He asked, "Is commercial credit primarily built on money and assets?" Morgan, "No, character comes first." He said that people who don't trust can't borrow any more bonds. This sentence is kept in the record of the congressional testimony of the day. The hearing did not convict Morgan, but it deepened the pressure for reform. The committee report depicts a highly centralized network of directors. Together with the antitrust wave, it pushed for institutional reform. Morgan's approach was to recapitalize the chaotic industry. It improved the efficiency of coordination and may also concentrate power in the hands of a few. This is precisely the conflict between private order and public governance. The crisis of 1907 proved that the state needed a permanent mechanism. Morgan died in Rome on March 31, 1913. He died at the age of 75, leaving behind a vast financial network. The body was shipped back to New York and placed in his library. On the day of the funeral, the New York Stock Exchange did not open until noon. But the problem of the lender of last resort has not disappeared. On December the 23rd of the same year, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law. Directly driving the reforms were the gaps exposed by the 1907 crisis. One of the objectives of the system is to reduce reliance on temporary private relief. In the previous episode, Fan chooses to move away from power, while Morgan moves toward the center. His choice was not to quit, but to reorganize and control. He used credit to establish order, which also prompted the state to establish rules. One retreated to the brink and one walked into the center of power. The two opposite paths are bounded by the boundaries of the times. There are no individuals who can permanently replace the system. There was also an oil magnate in the Morgan era, Rockefeller. He became America's first billionaire and long ranked as the richest man in history. His name is John D. Rockefeller. In the next episode, we walk into the black gold empire of Standard Oil.